Social media infographics are shaping our political discourse, and young people's minds are on the chopping block. It's now trendy to despise patriotism and cancel those who think differently than us. I'm Cameron Arcand. I'm launching the Young Not Stupid interview series, powered by the Western Journal. I'll be interviewing a wide variety of guests through a conservative lens with people that will better equip you with the truth about what's happening in our country and around the globe. President Ronald Reagan once said that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction, and we need to take that to heart. So tune in each Friday to the Young Not Stupid interview series to be prepared in the fight for the values that make America exceptional. Hey everyone, welcome back to another edition of the Young Not Stupid interview series. I'm Cameron Arcand, and today I'm here with Joe Pitts, here in person, not over Zoom. It's a lot better, a lot more exciting to have someone here in person in the office. It's very exciting to do this. So today, Joe Pitts is a student at Arizona State University, just like I am. He was the former president of Arizona State University's College Republicans chapter. He also balances and does a bunch of other stuff. I'm pretty convinced he does own a time machine. But today we're going to be talking about having a more casual discussion about why, what matters to Generation Z voters and his upbringing and how he formed his conservative values in a seemingly increasingly leftist world and education system. So, Joe, to start us off, can you maybe share a little bit about your background and maybe kind of some of the hats that you wear now?
Some of the hats that I wear now. Sure. Well, Cameron, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. So my first involvement in politics was on Senator John McCain's 2016 campaign. When I was in high school and I was at, I want to say it was the end of my freshman year. On my phone, I see this ad to get, it's like, oh, like, want a political internship? And so I signed up, and then that summer I was able to intern on that campaign, and that was my entrance into politics. But before then, I was raised by a single mom, and that definitely informed a lot of my conservative views. But after then, really getting involved on campaigns, understanding conservative policy, working with different politicians and people in the political arena, I think it really shaped my own outlook on politics.
You have quickly become one of the most, I would argue, probably one of the most influential young voices in politics for young people in the state at this current moment. And we have a nationwide audience, but I would say that there are a lot of people that that a lot of our older audience does have to look out for, and you're definitely one to watch. So in what ways would you say that you're currently politically active?
Sure. Well, like you said, I'm kind of in a weird in-between right now. So I was president of the College Republicans at ASU for about a year and a half. Now I'm president emeritus, which is a new position we've kind of created after I was president. But in general, a lot of my involvement ranges around candidates need help finding people to staff their campaigns. They want to give young people an opportunity. I'm there to help be that conduit. I know that there's a lot of great politicians out there here in Arizona who need that help. And I know there's also a lot of young kids in Arizona who just need an opportunity to get engaged in politics. And so a lot of it's informal. It's making just sure that there is a pipeline for talented young conservatives to get into these positions, whether it be in a congressional office or on a campaign.
Now, in what ways do you feel like that young people who are politically interested or in media can be better advocates for each other?
I think there has to be this acknowledgement that we're all in this together. We can't eat our own. We may have disagreements on minutia about what candidates we support in a primary, what policies we support, but ultimately we're all in the same cause and we're in it together. And so I think that's just a matter of working with students and making sure and young people in politics, and making sure they're able to have conversations like this and sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and say, what do we have in common?
Did your education help shape your values?
Right.
Or was it something that was acting against your values that were taught at home?
You know, I think I had this, I was raised by my mom and then with my mom and my grandparents in high school. I think they had this attitude raising me of saying, you need to think for yourself and come to these conclusions yourself. And that was everything from politics to religion. It was kind of all over the board. And so having that open environment to be able to explore at home and to explore different ideas, and however you want to do that, whether it's by reading, by watching YouTube videos, and all that fun stuff, is how I went about that. So I had this very free and open environment at home. But I do think in college, and specifically then in elementary school and high school, there is some pushback. I will say, though, I think that if you're really convinced that an idea is the truth and you really think that something's true, it's much easier to work with other people and to talk with other students at your school, including your teachers, and say, I have a different perspective, but we can come to an agreement on certain values.
So kind of with that in mind on kind of that same note as if you're staying respectful, if you're saying all of this, you're still going to get a lot of backlash. You're still going to get a lot of hate. And that's whether or not you are explicitly aligning yourself with a political party like you were with college Republicans, or if you're just advocating for a single cause. There is going to be backlash in today's culture. How you handled backlash publicly, if you've ever had to deal with that.
Well, lesson one was be very careful about your social media, and that is to all the kids who are a little younger than me watching, and even to those that are older than me or the same age. Be careful about your social media. But secondly, I had this experience where there were a lot of friends I had who I considered great friends who said, "No, you deserve the backlash because of your views of being pro-life, proudly pro-life." And so in a situation like that, you do need to have the strength, and I think you need to have the support network of other people, of other conservatives, of a family that loves and cares for you, of a community or a church life that loves and cares for you, to be there for you in those moments.
It's important to be careful with your social media, but also if you're deciding that you're going to advocate for a cause, or if you're going to do that, own it. That is literally that is probably the best any unsolicited advice that I could give with that, where I noticed that a lot of times when people get canceled or they're running into any of these issues, it has to do with the fact that they were hiding their views a lot of the times. And then they get canceled because someone found out their views, or they finally decided to share their views, and then they're getting all this backlash. So I think people need to pick a lane at some point where you're either going to decide, okay, I'm going to hide my views for this season of my life, and I'm going to sweep all this under the rug. I'm not going to say anything. Or you need to be fully out there and be very open and present with where your views are, because not everyone's going to like you. You need to just kind of deal with that fact. But if you're open about it, that's going to probably create less issues for you down the road.
Right. I'll add to that too, just in general, being honest about what you believe and why you believe it. Right. Because I think there is that moment where if you're hiding your views and what you truly believe, when those kind of come out, right, you run the risk of being canceled. But also more than that, it should be something you really care about and you deeply believe is true. Because if that's the place you're coming from, you're willing to take the backlash, you're willing to take the scrutiny, because all the scrutiny will amount to nothing because you are doing what you know is true.
What are some things that you think that we could do to kind of take it down a notch in a sense? Because I mean, we can't have anything now without some reporter, some whoever basically trying to incite something constantly. And I mean, social media has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
But even in person, how do we have conversations in a way that is more respectful with people that we disagree with?
Right. And I think this is one of those principles, too, that's uniquely conservative, in that when you want to change the world and you want to change the environment, you first have to change yourself. And so I think in those cases, being someone who is humble, who's willing to listen to somebody else's viewpoint, but also being a happy warrior, as it were, and really staying true to your values, but also recognizing that not everyone's going to agree with you, I think that's integral to what you're doing. Just being humble and being able to approach those issues with kindness and care.
Yeah. You've kind of talked a lot about in your work and a lot of the things that you do, about reaching out to younger voters, and a lot of that, I kind of hear this phrase a lot of, we need to talk about issues that Generation Z cares about. So my question for you is, what are those issues?
Sure.
And how can Republican politicians who typically struggle getting those younger voters actually achieve that?
Sure. Well, obviously you run into like the immediate roadblock, which is younger people always happen, and it's been historical, happen to be more liberal on average than their older counterparts or their middle-aged counterparts. So you can't always avoid that. I also think Republicans ought to steer clear of saying, in order to win over this group of people, we're basically just going to be Democrats light. That doesn't win over hearts and minds. I think you need to stay true to conservative values, to Republican principles, but I think it's about the issues you focus on, right? And so I know one of the issues that the left has dominated is the environment. And you have a lot of organizations out there. Benji Backer's doing great work at the American Conservation Coalition to go, listen, we don't need the Green New Deal to care about the environment. And a lot of conservatives, they're hunters, they're fishermen. They care about the environment, or they're just someone who happens to care about conservation in general. And so I think the environment's a big one. I think you've seen education is a big one.
Yeah.
And so you've seen that in Virginia, right? But I think it goes beyond, on the education topic in particular, just CRT and just the curriculum we're teaching, though those are very important and civic education is key. It also goes to the point of saying conservatives care about school choice, they care about economic opportunity and social mobility for folks that have typically been left out of the pie.
Yeah, and I would say too, look, there was an exit poll done from CNN, I believe, that showed that Youngkin was pretty closely tied with McAuliffe in that Gen Z millennial voter group. Right. And that wasn't because he was energizing all these young voters, although he did make some inroads with that. That was because the progressive left, the young people, they stayed home.
Yeah.
It's not going to convince anyone, but I think if we are kind of meeting people where it's like, oh yeah, I've heard about like stuff with the environment, but I'm not really sure if the world's going to end in X amount of years, that sort of thing. If we meet people where we're at with that, I think that's super important.
And if I can add too, I think there's this issue right now where Republicans recognize the need to have charismatic conservative voices, people who are willing to galvanize a crowd. And I think Youngkin did a wonderful job at this. And a guy like Youngkin, right, we look at him compared to a normal leader we might know in life. He's not the most charismatic guy. But if you compare him to your average Republican congressman, your average Republican representative, whatever it might be, he is very charismatic. And so I think we recognize that need. But I also think we ought to steer clear of just being a party for PR, right? Of using institutions to be performative rather than formative, right? And so I think I do see issue with purely seeing politics as a PR game. And I think people really appreciate local leaders and state leaders and congressmen and congresswomen who are actually willing to put in the work and do a good job and be competent and, care about good governance issues, as well as care about, like Youngkin did, CRT and these culture issues that do matter. It's not, the culture war isn't fake, but we have to focus on both culture and, the good governance.
And I think what's tough right now is we're kind of seeing people think that pick one. You got to pick one right now. And it's like, you're not going to win an election by picking just one.
Right.
People have multiple concerns. And when you're saying we just need to focus on the economy or we just need to focus on the cultural issues, a lot of politicians and strategists are assuming that the voters are stupid.
Yeah.
And that they can't wrap their heads around multiple issues. And that's not going to be the case. But kind of my closing note for you is, how are you feeling about 2022 right now? And we'll end with that.
Sure. Yeah. For Arizona in particular, or just in general?
Just in general. But if you want to focus on Arizona, go right ahead.
Yeah. I mean, historically, right, as I'm sure the viewers know, midterms have been great for the party that isn't in control. And so I think that's a very good sign. I think we're seeing good signs with Youngkin in Virginia, with that New Jersey race that, I think you turned the state 13 points from where it was with Joe Biden, which is a great sign. I think if you look at Arizona in 2020 as well, what you saw was while Trump lost on the top ticket, you had all these down ballot races where Republicans were continually winning. And that was in Maricopa County, which in order to win the state of Arizona, it's kind of known you need to win Maricopa County.
Yeah.
And so I feel really good about 2022, but I don't think that shouldn't mean that Republicans drop the ball and on these issues and caring about these issues, because the Democrats are really moving hard on the infrastructure bill, well, quote unquote infrastructure bill, on all those kind of things. And so I think we need to stay vigilant, but I think the future is bright.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Joe. I think this is a very productive conversation about what the future should look like in this country and what certain things and issues that people need to be thinking about going forward. If you guys like this interview, if you would like to see more content from the Western Journal, be sure to like and subscribe to this channel, as well as go to westernjournal.com for more of our articles and important stories that really will help equip you with the truth about what's going on in our country. I'm Cameron Arcand, signing off.